that. So today we're talking about the eighth principle. The worship committee and I decided that this summer we wanted to spend our time looking at our 7 principles. And it made sense to kind of start with the outlier, the 8th principle, not an official principle, a proposal. And I am going to share a little background with you as our reading. There is a website called 8thprincipleuu.org that I would encourage you to visit, since this is going to be an ongoing conversation. But here's a section that they call, "Where did this come from originally?" Paula Cole-Jones, who many of us interacted with through our Hudson Mohawk service, she's the director of racial and social justice, developed the idea of the existence of 2 different paradigms in UU circles: the UU 7 principles and beloved community, or deep multiculturalism. After working with congregations on these issues for over 15 years, she realized that a person can believe they are being a good UU and following the 7 principles without thinking about or dealing with racism and other oppressions at the systemic level. Evidence: most UU congregations are primarily European American in membership, culture, especially music, and leadership, even when located near diverse communities. She realized that an 8th principle was needed to correct this and talked with Bruce Pollock Johnson about some of the components that should be in it. Bruce put together an initial draft in 2013, and the 2 of them worked with a group of anti-racist activists in their region to refine it. Bruce's congregation incorporated it into their covenant at that time, and then in May 2017, formally adopted it for themselves and recommended that the UUA adopt it. UUs and the UUA have done very good work in fighting racism, such as during the Civil Rights Movement and in the 90s, passing a resolution at the 1997 GA after a precursor resolution in 1992 to become an anti-racist, anti-oppression, multicultural organization. But the funding and support started to wane in the 2000s. Our accountability mechanisms failed us. UUs also have a mixed record historically in other areas of racial justice, e.g. we had people on both sides of abolitionism, including Jefferson, who was a slave holder, and Unitarians were proponents of eugenics, leading to some of the racial extremes of Nazism and apartheid in South Africa. For people identified as white, it is too easy to ignore these issues, which is exactly what keeps the system of racism in our society alive, and in fact worsening right now. We need to decenter whiteness and other dominant cultures in Unitarian Universalism. So all of that and more is on the website. The 8th principle came from a feeling that we need something to renew our commitment to this work, to hold ourselves accountable, and to fulfill the potential of our existing principles. This year's General Assembly, which I so enjoyed even though it was all on Zoom, truly called all UUs into the work of moving our faith forward by addressing the structural inequalities that exist in society, acknowledging our failures to do so in the past, and pledging to create congregational communities that are able to examine white supremacy and take actions both within and beyond our walls. Over the next congregational year, I and others from the congregation will be offering small group ministries, Sunday services, discussion groups, and action plans so we can live into these UUA aims. I do hope you'll become involved. Today, we begin this deep dive with a look at the proposed 8th principle. I'm going to read it now. I also have it on a slide, but I no longer trust my slideshow, so I am just going to read it. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. The Brood Awakenings group and the Racial Justice group have read this already and begun some discussion around it. I know folks have already taken issue with the wording, but let's look past that for now and look closely at the intent and the impact of this principle. We all became UUs for different reasons, right? Some of you were lucky enough to be cradle UUs, and many of us, myself included, found Unitarian Universalism later in life, and in it found a religious and spiritual home that matched our worldview. Our 7 principles, I hope for all of us, serve as guiding tools for how to live in the world. I met someone in a Zoom room at GA who told me that when she is faced with a question or a concern or political issue, she takes a breath and asks herself, what are the principles guiding me to do? Our 7 principles cover a lot. They are in fact excellent guideposts. Certainly, we can, if we take the time, infer that caring for all of the members of our human community is embedded in them. But our UU history and even our present reality tells a different story. Our UU history tells us that we have not done right or nearly enough to address white supremacy and structural violence in this country. As expressed in our reading and can be seen even in the seats of UU Catskills, we can be a fairly white or European American religion that alleges to want diversity, yet hasn't found a way yet to be truly inclusive. We want people to come to us without understanding why they may not want to. We claim to want more BIPOC, which stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color members. Yet when BIPOC visitors or even members do come through our doors, they are met with microaggressions or outright questionable behavior by white UUs. We have yet to shed the paternalistic notions we have as do-gooders and often see ourselves as helping the needy rather than listening to the needs of others. And we also have trouble stepping back to let the voices of the underrepresented, marginalized, and disenfranchised lead us. While in some ways we are making progress, there is much more to be done, and I believe that the 8th principle may help us to not only unpack our UU history, but also do the personal, internal, heavy lifting necessary to do the true work of dismantling our unjust, oppressive, systemic ills, thus allowing for the creation of a true, egalitarian, beloved community. If the 7 principles have not helped us dismantle structural oppression thus far, then maybe we do need an 8th to make it clear, to put in bold letters, this is what we will do. We cannot we cannot dismantle systems of oppression by thinking the way we always have. As a newcomer to UU Catskills, I don't know all the details about the history of our Black Lives Matter sign, but I've heard a lot from a variety of members. And I'd like to say that we cannot vote to hang a Black Lives Matter banner, then take 2 years to actually hang it without recognizing that that act, that 2-year lag, was a tacit statement that maybe we don't really believe in that banner and what it stands for. A Black Lives Matter banner is not a flag of convenience or a show of performative activism. It is a clarion call to honor the lives of those who have suffered the most in the history of this country. to say out loud and publicly that we condemn police brutality. We condemn mass incarceration. We condemn the brutal deaths of Black people at the hands of white people. We condemn the violence deeply embedded in our structures and institutions that manifest as unequal educational opportunity and practice, unequal and oftentimes deadly healthcare practices and policies, unequal justice that places stronger punishments on those with darker skins. If we want a more diverse and inclusive UU Catskills community, then we have to examine who we are missing, who we are ignoring or undervaluing, and then make a commitment to dismantle the structures that perpetuate these injustices, even if it means our lives will have to change, even if it means we have to make sacrifices, even if it means giving up our privilege. As Brazilian educator Paulo Freire said, as did the father of Black liberation theology, Dr. James Cone, when we dismantle these violent systems, we not only free the oppressed, but we also free the oppressor. We cannot have a truly just society when even one member of our society is marginalized. We cannot be free until we are all free. And may we also remember the words of Nelson Mandela: it always seems impossible until it is done. Friends, let us live into the eighth principle. Let us do the work with honesty and humility. Let us dismantle structural racism and structural violence and usher in a true age of beloved community. May it be so.